Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to another 80s Horror Friday with a title which has been near and dear to my heart for quite a while now, and came up in conversation recently, which is for The Thing from 1982, directed by John Carpenter and starring Kurt Russell and Keith David, among many others. This is a remake of a film from the 60s called The Thing from Another World, and it's often cited as kind of being the case for the idea that not all remakes are bad. For those who are unfamiliar and perhaps have only really heard of it referenced but never really got around to seeing it, it even took me until, I would want to say, like maybe the mid-90s before I finally got around to it. The synopsis is as follows. A research team in Antarctica is hunted by a shape-shifting alien that assumes the appearance of its victims. Now, this came up again recently for me due to a conversation I was having with somebody about horror, and even though they were clearly 10 to 15 years younger than I am, they still reference this film as being pretty much their favorite horror film. And even about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, I would say, I did a video with the Terrific Lady, where we discussed The Thing versus the prequel, also called The Thing, and which many seem to think was a remake, so they kind of skipped out on it entirely. In fact, this film, The Thing, seems to be one of her favorites as well, and I will link to our video at the end of this, so stick around for that. But what is it about this film that makes it so special? And if one hasn't seen it, is it relevant now to somebody who's new to it? Or is it just nostalgia simply being at play for this one? So to recap, or to open up a bit more for those who aren't familiar, we have a scientific research team stationed in Antarctica, and a dog is kind of running towards the station, being pursued by a helicopter piloted by members of a Norwegian research team. They are taking shots at the dog and trying to destroy it. Now, needless to say, the camp that we are centering on here is a bit bewildered by this, sees this as a threat, and in trying to protect themselves, not understanding what's going on, the Norwegians end up meeting their demise, and we launch into this mystery, which is what's the deal with this chase and this dog, and what's actually going to happen with this dog now that they've taken it in. They just want to investigate what's going on with all this. But a lot goes on here. We have this dog is kind of transforming and almost like absorbing other dogs, becoming this monstrous thing, the Thing. The tracing of the research from the Norwegian camp, where they had kind of, looked for clues as to what exactly was happening with them, to a partially excavated alien craft, which has been buried in the ice for thousands and thousands of years. This is after they had seen something had been dug out of it at the camp. And this idea that they've come across, throughout this film, that people are now being assimilated by this thing as well. So now we have the idea of, who is the enemy and the threat? How will they survive? Can they even survive this? What will happen if this thing which assimilates gets off the continent? Will it assimilate the entire world? Is the whole world kind of doomed if it gets out of there? Now, looking back on this film, which really came to light last year when I had revisited the original and the prequel, I know it keeps me coming back to it. Some stuff I've mentioned time and time again, such as mystery. Something that I felt that the prequel had kind of lacked. The investigative side of this, uncovering that mystery behind what this thing is, starting with the Norwegian team in that helicopter, which, of course, if you speak Norwegian, they literally spell everything out as to what's happening with this dog. But as somebody who doesn't speak Norwegian, it remained a mystery to me the first time I was seeing it. But everything about this dog, and why would they be chasing it down and taking these shots at it? Checking out the site, that mystery, kind of finding the ship, and later trying to investigate their own camp and figure out who is who or what. That paranoia setting in with it. More on that in just a little bit. But that sense of mystery was what had always really pulled me to this film, and why, even though I know the end of that mystery, I still would find myself revisiting it from time to time. But what keeps me there as well is my second point, the isolation, seclusion, and being trapped in that situation. Anytime I see a horror film where there's an easy way out, I lose interest. It's one thing to make a bad decision, get yourself in some trouble. That makes sense. But if there are multiple chances to get out of that trouble and you don't take it, I lose interest in it. For The Thing, there's nothing that can be done. They are stuck there. Even if they could call for help, it would take so long to get it, they would all be doomed. Not just in that they are far away from civilization, but that they're in Antarctica. They can't just run off. You would freeze to death. This is like peak isolation, which could probably only be topped by maybe a film in outer space. Just they can't get out of that situation no matter what. I love them being trapped and confined. As for my third point, as mentioned earlier, that paranoia. Basically like how it works with these characters. So, with these characters, they're all great. They're well written, very distinct. Everyone is such like an individual with no one kind of blending into the background to simply become like horror movie fodder in a way. They are generally all likable, even when the paranoia sets in and you don't trust them or the decisions that they're making. But especially McReady. Russell's character, he's always been really good at playing the everyman, and he brings that to this character as well. So they're definitely like coming across, and even though he's still kind of coming across as our lead, we can really see what his place is within that group. He has his place, his purpose, as does everybody else. But this echoes what I say about the characters in the other videos, is that I have to like them and care for their well-being, even if some eventually turn, whether, in this film by being replaced and mimicked in a way, or in some other films. They can turn, and I can learn to see them as the antagonist in the film, or even just, in general or in a specific scene, as long as I'm initially cool with them. Everyone in this group is great, so I don't want them dead, which makes that kind of scary. But the fourth point on this one, to kind of build up onto that paranoia part of the characters, is that people suspecting each other, turning on each other, making bad decisions due to that paranoia. You almost get more scared of the people and what they are going to do, what those bad decisions are going to be, rather than the actual thing, as even though one of them could be the thing. Or they might not, but they might make a decision that turns out to be for the worst, something worse than the thing itself. That whole paranoia will destroy you thing really is done well here. So there's such a mix of things going on. But it's also not a non-stop kind of action film with a lot of excitement. In fact, there are a lot of very slow spots, but they're done in such a way as they kind of help to build that paranoia and suspense and really help it sink in. Along with that, there's like a beating throughout it. Like the score by Ennio Morricone, similar in some ways to what I've heard Carpenter do in some of his compositions, which for years I'd thought that he had actually produced the score himself. But we have that thumping and droning, that heartbeat style score, almost representing the heart rate that we should be having in some of these scenes. It helps to kind of be the glue that keeps me stuck in that film. And on top of it all, one of the most surprising reactions I see when checking out like YouTube reaction videos or people checking out this film for the first time is the special effects, because of the technology of the time. This was all practical, and it was very disgusting. 1 minute you would be seriously grossed out at like the oozing and dripping aspects, terrified of this insane result of these transformations, even not to mention the transformation itself, but then also marveling at how it was done. Digital has its place for sure. It can be wonderful, but so does practical. And like being the case for how remakes can also be good, this is a case for that idea that practical will not only always have a place, but in many cases it can be the best route to go. It feels more tactile and real. Now, there have been some debates over the years as we get towards like the end of the film about the survivors and who is possibly the thing or not. There are entire video essays out there, I'm sure, which kind of dive into all those sorts of details, indicating who, and quotes from Carpenter himself even that kind of just give it all away. But I'm not really going to go into all that, because as I've said, and as something for you new people, these videos are simply, I like this for this reason, maybe you will too. But in summary, this one has indeed stood the test of time for me, no matter how many times I revisit it. Even if you're like a teenager coming across this video, this film is one that you will likely still really enjoy, even though it came out decades before you hatched. We get this cold seclusion of interesting characters, this, investigating a mystery and dealing with a deadly sci-fi horror situation with some of the best practical, just the best effects in general, in a film which has stood the test of time over the past 40 plus years and likely will for another 40 plus going on, as it was more than worth checking out. And speaking of checking out, thanks for checking out this other video here for my latest Friday 80s horror video for The Thing from 1982, which at the time of this video is only on paid rental, which is kind of surprising. So check out that Just Watch app from time to time, as I would expect this one to pop up onto another platform sometime, as it's, a classic. Now, as for the prequel, it does have its moments, but it kind of falls a bit flat for me. However, I will link to a video that I did for that one in just a moment, so be on the lookout for that link coming shortly. And finally, if you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up, and if not already subscribed, consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon to get notified for when I put up new content, or just swing by the channel and check it out every now and then. If I post, it's going to be on a Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. Usually I do every Friday no matter what. Occasionally I'll put up one on Mondays, and from time to time I'll do one on a Wednesday. Anyways, with that, thanks again for coming by, and I will see you in the next one.